Hello, I am very excited to kick off this debut podcast episode. My name is Rebecca, and I am the developmental editor behind Hart Bound Editing. It is my goal with this podcast to talk to some of the amazing authors that I've had the privilege of working with and just sort of pick their brains about their creative process, their stories, their genres, all of that sort of stuff, and particularly their editing and revision process to give all of our listeners an idea of what that might look like for them. Today, my guest is Myrenne, the author of Three Coins in a Dead Man's Pocket, which is the first book in the Realm of Soul series, which is currently running a very exciting Kickstarter. Hello, Myrenne.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm delighted. So I'm so glad I've gotten the chance to chat with you today about your story. And we're going to talk about your inspirations and your process around it and what you're doing with it now. So to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about the story?
Oh, great. Gosh, where to begin? So the story is about a Druid. Now, everyone thinks when I write Druid, they think, oh, it's a typo. It is not a typo. It's a word I made up because we have Druids, and a lot of people know what Druids are, especially if you're in fantasy. But I thought, well, she's female, so I'm going to make her a Druid. Why not? We have actors, we have actresses. I'm going to make her a Druid. I'm just going to come up with my own thing. So she is a Druid, and her magical ability is druidic magic, and she guides souls to the afterlife. And while she guides souls to the afterlife, she stumbles upon a stranger that no one else can see. His soul feels strange to her, and she can't quite put her finger on why that is. Um, well, also the realm that she lives in kind of starts to fall apart, and she begins to ask questions and trying to figure out why is the realm falling apart and who did this and why would they do such a thing, and all of a sudden we have all of these souls that have been freed from their bodies, and the commodore of the realm turns out to be not who everyone thinks he is, and she discovers she's part of a thousand-year-old secret that her aunt has been keeping from her. And so she is not a young person. She's not like an 18-year-old or a 16-year-old. She is a 30-year-old woman who has gone through her trials. She's gone through heartbreak, and she's at the same time she's finding out these things about her past. She's also kind of grasping some things for herself, um, and taking a chance on love. And so there's airships involved. There's you might call it epic fantasy, where we have a world with all these rules. There's a good afterlife, a bad afterlife. There's what's called the liminal plane or the liminal level, where the souls kind of exist, and only druids have access to that. So there's a lot of elements happening, and of course she has her friend group, and she is kind of refurbishing her zeppelin. She's got hobbies, and she sings, and uh, so yeah, she's kind of a save the world steampunk fantasy with some spicy romance moments in there. So it's all of the things that I love. Like we write the stories. Like, I wish there was a story about this, and I was just like, well, this is what I like, and this is what I like, and I'm going to put it in there. So my story, I'm
Absolutely.
going to put it in there.
I love it. Yeah, that's definitely how I got started writing as well, was I want to read a story and I can't find it, so I'm going to write it.
That's
That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much. That is all great. And went on my multiple reads through it, I loved it. And yes, your protagonist is a fantastically well-rounded character. And
Yeah.
just outside of, like you said, that sort of archetype type of, oh, she's 18 and she's gonna go save the world. It's really nice to read a slightly more mature protagonist who has a more realistic grasp on life and all of the struggles that she faces.
I appreciate that because I struggled writing her. I could write all the people around her very easily because I felt like I was her. And, in the first couple of go rounds, it was just like, who is she and what is she doing and how is she feeling? And that's something I struggled with. People kind of thought like people like before you got your hands on it, people were like, she's kind of flat, and I was like, oh man. So I appreciate you telling me that because I struggled. I struggled making her very well rounded. Like, I knew who she was, but I struggled putting it on paper.
Fair.
So I am really glad. And yeah, I wanted somebody that was well-rounded, that could make decisions, that was, putting her family before herself and had a good heart, and she wasn't out to like, like have it out for all these other people. Like she truly, genuinely loves other people and wants to see them succeed and wants to see them cared for. And she has done it so much that she has put herself on the side. And so we're just kind of
Yeah.
seeing this moment where she's finally starting to kind of grab moments for herself
Very
in the
cool.
book. And like, why can't I be with this handsome guy? Like, why not? I haven't been with anybody for a long time. I've always put somebody in front of myself, and I feel like I relate to her that way. And I think a lot of people are like that. They put their family and they put their children and they put, like whoever it is that they love before them a lot of times. And then they don't really get to experience things. And so I feel like we're at the moment where she is like, I'm doing all these things for other people. I'm just gonna take some moments for myself. And
Excellent.
and yeah, I'm excited for that. And even in book two, it's gonna get even better.
Cool. So, were you a big reader in steampunk fantasy romance before you started writing this one?
So that's funny because okay, I was that girl that kind of took all of the romance reads off my mom's bookshelf when I was younger. I have some old school like Jude Devereux is one of my favorite authors from back in the day. And uh my mom just has books upon books on her shelf, and that's what she likes to read, and that's what Susan Elizabeth Phillips and Danielle Steele and those kinds. That's what I
Yeah.
read growing up. But my very first steampunk book was Beck McMaster's steampunk series. Ooh, I can't remember the name of it, but she has two different series. The second one kind of piggybacks off the first one, and they're vampires and werewolves and mechs, which is she called mechs, where they have like steampunk like arms and legs um and it is just so cool. And I found it accidentally during COVID because we were like trying to find some things at the library to pick up, and I
Yeah.
accidentally found it while like browsing for something else, and
Nice.
I devoured them. And she is the only author that I've actually read a steampunk books. Now I did purchase some other ones. I haven't read them yet that I found. I want to say it's called the Parasol Protectorate. If that sounds right? Have you
I
seen
have
that?
heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found some editions that were like books 1, 2, 3, and then book 4, 5, 6.
Mm.
And I grabbed those off a used website. So I'm excited to read those.
Nice.
And but I haven't. I feel like there's not enough there, and I really hope that this genre kind of takes off because it's just such a cool and interesting thing. And I'm really hoping that it becomes like the next thing that people want to see. I feel like we've had a very long run of Fae,
Yeah.
right? Just very, very long run of Fae. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about that because I have read my fair share, and they're great. What's going to be next?
Yeah.
Like what is going to be the next obsession? And I really hope it's something like this. I think it'd be really fun.
Well, I'm right there with you. I love this genre and I'm
Hey,
excited to see more. So what are some of your favorite tropes, particularly that you have put into this story, into your current work?
yeah. So a note about tropes. I think they're so hard to pin down unless you know them well. It took me a really long time. The learning curve on this thing was huge because this was
Yeah.
my first book, I mean, it's taken me a really long time. And the tropes that uh that came out of this book were found family. Like she gets to meet some family towards the end. A love corner, which is different than a love triangle, right? Because
I love the distinction.
a lot of people just think it's a triangle. No, it's a corner. A triangle is this person and this person and this person all like somebody else, whereas a love corner, we've got two people liking the same person, making it a making. Yeah, I'm trying really hard to educate on that. I don't think a lot of people are getting that. I just always say love corner.
I wish
Um,
more people would grasp the differences there so that we could have a clearer discourse about it.
yeah, for sure. Because you think because people will say, "Oh, you mean a love triangle like Bella and Edward and Jacob?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a love triangle." So yeah, I just it's but but like the learning curve is is there, right? Like if you're a book person, you gotta be in the book world to know the terms, like tropes, right? And I'm sure somebody else could read my book and go, "Oh, you have this trope," and I would go, "Oh, I didn't think about
I
that."
do?
Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're right. Maybe I do." So yeah, we said we have some found family. We have a love corner. We have, gosh, put me on the spot now. I can't think of anything. I mean, there's steampunk, obviously.
Okay.
Um, I'm sure I'll think of some more as we go. I should probably pull up like a.
No, you're totally fine. I know that this is something that a lot of authors can struggle with seeing in their own work. So I usually will try to mention the tropes that I see in my clients' work if they ask me to just keep an eye out for that. Like, what tropes do I have? Because it is really hard to see in your own work.
Yeah, I mean, when
So,
you're in the weeds, you don't
yes,
see things.
exactly.
Yeah,
Can't
and
see the forest or the trees.
that's right. You can't. You can't.
So we've talked about your protagonist and we've talked about some of the tropes. Where would you say you got some of your inspiration for the world that you're building? Because you're in a genre where the world building is so important to the whole story.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, so I feel like a lot of the things that happen, or a lot of the ways that the world is built, is a result of an issue that I might have had. So, for
Mhm.
example, the liminal plane did not exist in my first three drafts, but I had a problem with my plot. And I was like, how am I going to fix this? And so I thought and I thought and I thought. And eventually I was like, I'm just going to make a new, I'm just going to make a new level of existence.
Yeah.
And, and that solved like four problems I had with the
Yeah.
plot. And so a lot of this is just, like, well, okay, I have this issue, but I really want to make sure that this happens. How can I make it happen to where it makes sense? Right. Because you can't have a
Right.
whole bunch of things where the readers are, you hate it when you're reading a book and you're like, why couldn't they have just done this? Like,
Yes.
this is an issue, right? And so when you're reading it, you're like, can't have like even me seeing it, someone's going to pick up on it. Like I can't just gloss over it, right? And so a
Yeah.
lot of the time, it was just like, well, what do I want, and how do I want to represent things in the
Mhm.
world, right? But then I have a problem. How am I going to fix that problem? So for example, the temple is something that is at the very, very bottom of this city of iron grid work that has just been built up over the years. It's rough, it's kind of haphazardly built. Um, and the temple is at the very, very bottom where the earth is. And city people don't see the earth like somebody of the temple would. And
Mhm.
it's a temple of the five, which kind of gets into the religious thing. But when you have a world, right? You look at our world, you think, well, what makes our world run? What makes our world function? What makes people do the things they do? Religion is one of those things. And and the government is one of those things. Like the government controls things that tie her hands, basically, where she's not allowed to travel.
Yeah.
The magic is something that ties her hands, where she can only do so many things. Or when she pushes it, or when she takes a chance, she learns more about that magic and her own abilities. And so, I had an idea when I started, but I feel like it just grew and grew and grew when I had characters that needed to do certain things, but the world I had built for them didn't allow it. And so I had to come up with ideas and ways that helped them to function and help them to grow in the world. And so that's kind of how it
Very
ended up.
cool.
And the more I'm in the world, the more I'm like, man, I'm glad that I created it this way. Like I'm happy with it, thankfully, because I'm going to be spending a while here. And of course I get other ideas for other things that don't quite fit. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to jot that down for the next thing. Like I don't know where that's gonna fit, but I like this idea. I'm going to jot it down for the next thing.
Well, that's very
So
cool. It sounds like it was very much a process of just building the world around the story that you wanted to tell, which is fantastic. And I so very deeply understand what you're talking about of just going, well, a reader's going to see that I, wimped out on this, so I need to fix it because honestly, that's how I ended up getting into developmental editing years ago. And now I am so delighted that it's literally my job to read
Yeah,
manuscripts and go,
yeah,
I
that's
think your
great.
reader's going to see that you wimped out on this. Here's some ideas for how we can build it up and build it into the world building and all that sort of stuff. So
Yes.
this is
And
a
your
great.
advice, like on some of those topics, was so legit. Like I was like, oh, that's a good point, Rebecca. Like I can fix that, like it was good, the pages of reflection, and some of those things it was like, okay, when I get to page two, like, oh, I fixed that in page one, so this is good now, and then other times it was like, I did not think about that. Like I had to
Yep.
reevaluate from your feedback. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, but here's the great thing about it is it made it stronger, right? Because you're right, like the
Yeah.
reader's gonna find that hole and the reader's gonna go, could have just done that. So whenever somebody says, oh hey, you have this issue, I'm gonna, it's like, well, if you saw it, someone else is gonna see it,
Yep.
and we gotta fix
Absolutely.
it, we gotta make it better.
Yeah. So are you I kind of want to segue into like your process for creating this book, especially since this is your first book, like you mentioned earlier. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you outline? Like, what was your process before you started drafting?
So I'm a hardcore plotter. I'm a planner. I am a list maker. And I'm on my computer right now, so I'm not sure if maybe I could just unplug it for a minute. So let me tell you the story first. So I used to be a teacher. I taught I've taught kindergarten all the way to high school, but my main thing is middle school, especially I was a band director and I love middle school band, and that's my degree. That's what it is in. And this time 6 years ago, I had two very, very little people. I had twins, and I took some time off, but then I went back to work in the fall, and it was ridiculously hard, like very, very hard. And I thought, what am I doing to myself? I'm just making myself crazy. So I ended up resigning at Christmas time from my job, and I stayed home with my children. And once I got sleep and once I got a breath,
Yeah.
my brain started working again. And my brain was like, we need to create something. And I was like, I create what? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it just kept turning. And eventually, um, somewhere I heard the phrase, or something happened where I heard the phrase of 3 coins from a dead man's pocket. And I was like, that's an interesting, I love titles. I love working from a title. And I know a lot of people do it the opposite, like they write the
Yeah.
book and then they're like, what kind of title will fit this? I hear something and I think, oh, that sounds like a book title. And then
I
my
do that
brain just,
too. Yeah.
yeah, because you ask questions, right? Because when you hear 3 coins from dead man's pocket, you're like, oh, why are there three? And why are they in his pocket? And why is he dead? Who killed him? What happened? Why are these coins special? Why are they in the pocket? Where are they? So instantly you have all these questions, which then your brain goes, we can come up with answers. And so my brain did. It came up with answers, and I just started jotting things down. And it got to the point where I had so many notes, kind of like scrambled around the house, and sticky notes, and this and that and the other. I thought I really should put all these on one piece of paper. And as a teacher, your teachers are notorious for like collecting school supplies, right? Like I have buckets of crayons and markers and sticky notes and folders and binders and some of that has come in handy since I'm homeschooling my oldest this year. But so I had a roll of butcher paper, and I was like, that butcher paper is very large. I think I'm going to use this butcher paper, and so I taped it up onto my wall. It is very long. I have a very long hallway, and I taped it up to my wall, and I started writing on it. Whether it was 2 a.m. because we were awake for a feeding, or whether, people were in the bathtub, or, they were taking a nap. And I just started jotting down ideas. And pretty soon I had this entire piece of butcher paper filled with ideas.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, okay, I'm going to try and take my laptop. I'll show you. So
So this is This is primarily a podcast, so please do like narrate what we're seeing
Oh,
here
okay,
in the
absolutely. Thank you
videos.
for the reminder. Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna walk. We're on screen. So I'm gonna walk down my hallway. My hallway is very long, like I said, and as I'm walking, I've got 4 pieces of butcher paper up right now, but this is
Wow.
so you
It
can
look
see I've got lots of sticky notes, and this is my
yeah.
plot. I have a very long plot. I've got notes about how things would look and how
My
people would.
goodness.
I'm not even kidding. Like
That's
maybe I wrote a
wild.
scene down and I thought that doesn't go here. I'm gonna
Yeah.
circle that and I'm gonna draw this super long line of where it is gonna go. This is how I know I want it to end. But then I
Yeah.
had like a big blank space because I wasn't sure exactly how I was gonna get there. So I started writing my prequel, and this is an example of the big blank space. Like I had the beginning, and I
Yeah.
have some ideas, but there's a big blank space kind of in the middle because I know how it needs to end, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure how I'm going to get there.
That is
Um,
so cool. I don't think I've ever seen any outlining quite like that. That's fabulous.
and I have sticky notes everywhere. Like I have sticky notes in my purse, or we're constantly making notes on our phone.
Yeah.
I have my pencil right here that I just kind of stick on my piece of paper when I need it. And this is all of book 2 with all the sticky notes and ideas. So
That's
yeah, so that's
fantastic. That's fabulous. So you clearly did a ton of preparation before you even started drafting, which I am the same kind of writer. I totally get it. So once you'd finished drafting, obviously my primary interest is what was the whole revision process like for you? Like, I know you got feedback at several different stages. I was very happy to be part of a couple of those. But what was your revision process like from the moment you typed the end on the first draft?
wow. So let me just say that when it comes to revising, and when it comes to anything that you're learning, right? You have got to be able to take constructive criticism. I think that is one of the biggest. And as a teacher, right, I was constantly like giving lessons and I was constantly telling the kids, okay, that was great. Let's do it a little softer this time. Let's do it a little louder this time, or, whatever it is. As a band director. And when you are getting some critiques and you have asked for critiques on some piece of art that you have done, because let's face it, this is artwork. Like
Absolutely.
it is a form of art, and it's like a big puzzle that your brain has to put together and make work somehow.
Mhm.
You really have to be open to what people are saying, and you have to take it. Now, I'm not saying take everybody's advice, but you do have to take it and go, okay, let's think about that for a minute because that might be a good point, or whatever. So like I was saying, like you were saying, how you felt like Ava was a really well-rounded character. I'm so glad you said that because the very first draft I sent to an editor, they were like, she's very flat. I don't know what she's thinking. I don't know her values. I don't know how she feels about things. And so I struggled mightily with that. And I also struggled with how to show characters' feelings about things without actually saying. Because my stuff is in third person. I like to read in third person. I'm going to write in third person.
Same.
So to show how she was feeling without saying Ava thought every single time, right? Or have it in italics or whatever, was tricky. It was very hard. And I hope to goodness that when I write book 2, I'll remember how to do it because it's been a while because I've been promoting, you know. So I'll probably get to book 2 and go, oh, I forgot everything I learned.
Yeah. Well,
So
being able to onboard criticism like that is also something I don't think most people realize is a learned skill or a learnable skill. And that was something that I noticed with you was when I gave you my first, initial feedback, you were remarkably receptive to it, but not in a, oh, well, she knows best, so I'm going to do the thing way. It was more in a, okay, I'm open to it. I'm clearly processing it and I'm going to I think we're swapping voice memos or something like that of just processing through, making sure that we were on the same page and all that kind of stuff.
well,
So
thank
what
you
would
for
you
saying
say
that.
is the biggest change that you made between your first draft and the one that you have now gotten all polished up for publishing?
Um, gosh, well, I think definitely definitely diving in and showing, right? They always say show don't tell, which was really hard for me to understand. Um, but once I figured it out, I think that made the story deeper, and it made it, it made it more relatable. And like I was saying earlier, trying to solve the issue that I had, the plot hole that I had with that liminal plane. And now I can't imagine the story without it. Like it is such an integral part of this world. Um, and I can't wait to expand on it further. Like I'm really excited. And we're going to be diving into the afterworld in book 2, whereas in book 1 you just kind of get a glimpse of what they're like. In book 2 we're going to have so much more happening. And I think those are going to be the two biggest things that I feel like for my very first draft, right? And what's crazy is that my first draft was like, I don't know, 100,000 words maybe.
Yeah.
She, my the first person that got a hold of it, they're like, okay, you need to explain this. You need to explain this. I know you know what it means, but
Yeah.
people don't know what it means.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I literally added probably 25,000 words just explaining. And then after that, it was like, okay, now let's cut it down and get rid of the words we don't need, because that was something else, right? Like a line editor was like, you don't need this, you don't need this. And I was like, oh, okay. And my grammar, and I had a huge issue with a certain type of phrase which I didn't even know existed. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But she worked through it with me. Now I'm seeing what you mean. So yeah, it was kind of like going back to junior high where you're like diagramming sentences and figuring out parts of the sentence, and you're like, oh, I never thought I would use this ever again in my life, and here I am, using grammar that I have forgotten all about from middle school.
And
So
the
yeah, I
learning
think
curve on the first couple of novels is always going to be so steep.
yes, 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 yes. So I'm wondering what kind of things I'm going to learn in this next book.
Yeah.
You know,
So, were there any suggestions that you got from me or any of the other folks that you got feedback from that you chose to completely ignore that were either because it was emotional, like you just loved that character, you loved that plot point, or because you just really disagreed with them? Like, do you have any big things that come to mind when I ask that?
absolutely. So like I said earlier, like if you're getting feedback from anybody, right? Number one, it is your story. It is your story. It is not their story. It is your story. So if that is something that you are hanging your hat on, then do it. Like that's yours. You're allowed to do that. For
Absolutely.
example, I love dropping hints about stuff. I love dropping hints about future happenings. I love, saying things that a reader would go, huh, and then making sure they totally forget it. So that when it comes up again, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I remember that now. Like I love that. Like I love reading that, and I want people to do that because that's what makes a good conversation, right? We sit around and we talk about other books that do that, and people are like, well, I heard that this particular character was actually this in book 1. And people like to speculate, they like to talk about it, and that's what I want people to talk about it, and I want people to go, I'm going to have to go back to book 1 and read that in a different light now that I know that, right?
Yep.
So I had an editor say, if you're not going to talk about this, don't put it in. And I was like, nope, I'm putting it in there because I like it. Like I want people to go, oh my gosh, I can't wait till that story. For example, this would be the example that I would think about. So Ava's best friend are twins. I have to put twins in there because of mine. And they are a brother sister twin. And the sister's name is Dahlia, and she has a past. And towards the end of the book, you get a glimpse of her past, and you get a glimpse of her hope for her and her little girl.
Nice.
And the mama part of me wants to read that and write that so bad, right? Because I want to see that family brought back together. Um, and there are other little snippets here and there that I know what they mean, but maybe a reader is not going to understand until they read something else. And then they're going to go, I'm going to have to go back and look at that. So that was one of the things that one of my editors was like, if you're not going to talk about it, take it out. And I was like, ooh, it's going to stay in there.
Well, for what it's worth, I'm totally with you on that one. I think that that particular story element, you set it up perfectly to lead into the next book in the series, and I can't wait to see what you do with it.
You. I'm excited too.
So, what do you think was the most emotionally difficult change for you to make that you did actually end up doing?
Hmm. You mean like,
Like the thing that you agreed needed to get fixed or get changed, but you had the most resistance to doing so, but you still did it and you think it
uh,
does serve the story.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think, um, so why do we read, right? Why do we read? We read because we like a good story. We read because we relate to the characters. We read because we can see ourselves in this moment, right? It's an escape from our reality. And when when my editor was like, you need to make these changes or you need to figure out a way because this doesn't work. Um, there were moments where I'm like, but that's the way that's the way it's gotta happen, or whatever the case was. So putting emotion, especially with my main character, like I had one point where one of my editors thought that she was just like after every guy that was in the book. And I was like, okay, that's not it. So apparently I did not portray that correctly. Right. So I
Mhm.
had to go back and redo some things to make sure everybody knew like she was not after this one. She
Yeah.
was, not after this one, but but he likes her. Make it just very clear that she she was after something for herself, but it wasn't just like whoever she could get, right?
Yeah.
So I had to make some things very clear that I didn't do right off the bat, if
Okay.
that makes sense. So yeah, it was a critique on how I was portraying her wants and her desires, I think. That I struggled with mightily on that until I was able to define it. Because again, it was one of those things where my main character, like I knew her in my head, but it was hard putting that on paper. Uh, so
Absolutely.
so that was a struggle for sure.
Cool. So, what do you think that you will do differently on book two on your next project, especially around the editing process because of everything that you've learned from your first book?
Yeah. Gosh. So I'm a very analytical type of person. And I really, because when I do it, I want to do it right the first time or as right as I can, so that I can learn the next level. If we keep making, if we do something at the same point every single time, we're never going to get to that next level. It's just like math, like if I always start with addition, I am never going to get to calculus. So I hope that the things I learned from writing the first time around, that will be my base point
Mhm.
when I start the second book. So, for example, describing the space, especially describing the space in different viewpoints.
Mm.
I saw a thing with Brian Sanderson. And he talked about this exercise where the stranger rides in town and the stranger sees certain things about the town, and then the doctor comes through town and he sees certain things, right? But it's through the doctor's eyes, or you can just pick whoever you want. But you see the town differently depending on whose eyes you're looking through. So I really want to take my observation to the next level when it comes to book two, is describing things the way a character would see it. And I hope that through each scene I can say, okay, did I talk about their emotions? Did I show their emotions? Not necessarily talk. Did I show their emotions well? What kind of words am I using? Am I using something that's very deep, or am I using something that's very surface? Um, how are my sentence structures? Making sure I don't do that horrible. I think it was like prepositional phrasing or something. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did it all the time.
Yeah.
And my editor was like, you can't do this all the time. You can do it once in a while, but you can't do it all the time. Exclamation points,
Ah,
they start to lose their efficiency, right?
yeah.
If you use them once a page, so you only want to use it every now and then. M dashes, things like that. So I want to start at the level that I stop,
Mhm.
that I had learned the most from book two. I don't want to start at that level for book two. I'm sorry, book one, but I want to start at that level for book two.
Yeah.
when I start writing that. And I hope to goodness it makes it deeper. And I hope to goodness that 5 years from now, I'll go back to book one and go, oh, that was terrible. I need to fix it. Or maybe I'll be like, for book one,
Yeah.
Even Cassandra Clare says the very first books she wrote, she would go back and look and just think, oh, this is not the way I write now. It's
Yeah.
very different. As an author, you're going to evolve, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so, I hope that I go back to book one in 5 years and go, that's not half bad. I could do I could change this here and there, but that's not half bad.
Very nice. So, what's up next for you in your author journey and what's further out on the horizon?
Oh yeah. So right now, I am running a Kickstarter, and you know, this was a chance, right? This was a total like, well, we're just gonna throw it out there and see what happens. Because I really wanted to release book one with a bang, and I wanted to find more people that wanted more of this steampunk fantasy with magic type book. And I feel like they're out there. We just gotta find them. We
Yeah.
gotta find our people. Um, and so I'm running that until April 29th. And right now, last time I checked, we're almost $500 away from our goal, which I'm so excited about. Because my goal was set a little higher than most people's, because most authors on there are very experienced. They have a big backlist. They're shelling out omnibuses, with books one, two, three, and four in it. And they have money for extra artwork, and they have money for all of these things, and so they set their funding like at $500, and they meet it in 30 minutes, because two people pledged. And so I was not there. I was terrified to fund too low, to put my goal too low, to because I'm already in the hole, right? When you write, you're spending money on editing and on covers and on graphics. And so I set it a little higher, and I don't know, maybe that was a bad idea or not, but so right now but I wanted to release it with a bang. And I really want to release every single book on Kickstarter because I think it's special. And I think it's awesome for the very first print edition to be extra special. And I think just that's what I wanted. That's what I want to do. It's my book. I don't have anything to lose at this point in my life. I'm on the downhill side of things, right? So I'm probably over halfway of my life, and I think I don't even care anymore. So that's what
So
we're doing right now, and it's
what
exciting.
what else is included in your Kickstarter?
You're asking. So right now, we're doing hardbacks with dust jackets and a picture underneath the dust jacket on the actual book itself. Um, I have a paperback with duplex covers. I have postcards that I've created myself. I have bookmarks I've created, and probably I'm offering tea from a local tea company, and I'm working with them.
Delightful.
Yeah, it's really neat. We have a local tea company here that I've been speaking with, and they sell their tea sachets wholesale. And so I'm like, I want to get in on that. I'm offering tea. And probably one of the most exciting things that I'm doing is I'm working with a local artist too that works at the local theater here, and we're creating songs and poems out of the language that I created. Because once again, when you think about a world, you think, oh, we have our languages. We have so many languages, right? And so I created a language for my world that's an ancient language at this point. And so all of the spells happen. I say all the spells. A lot of the spells happen in this ancient Ely language. And so we are collaborating, and we're singing a temple song. We're singing Ava's got a song that she sings because when she guides souls to the afterlife, she sings to kind of help them bond. And I'll be reciting some ancient Ely poems and spells on this micro album. I'm calling it a micro album because it's little. It's only like 5 tracks, and so that is something that I'm super excited about because I feel like it's a unique thing. Because a lot of Kickstarters don't have that, right? They have a lot of paper
Yeah.
products, so they have a lot of
No,
whatever.
that is so cool. And honestly, you're one of the only authors that I've worked with who put that much effort into creating a unique language for your world. So I am extra excited about it for that reason.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It took me a while, but I love it. I love the fact that other things like, and they use it throughout. They just like say ah is yes and yeah is no, and just little things here and there. But I love like Lord of the Rings, Elven.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of that. I like it. So guess what? I'm putting it in my book.
Excellent. As an author, that is entirely what you should be doing.
That's right.
So, if folks find this podcast episode after the Kickstarter has ended, where can they find you and your work?
Thank you. So I do have a campsite link where it will list all of my things. So it will list my website, it will list all of my socials, and it will have a link to purchase it on Amazon. I will be going with after the Kickstarter is over and we do all the special things. I will be going with KDP as my printer, and it will be listed on Amazon for
Cool.
sale there and as an ebook.
And I'll make sure to get all of those links for you from you and put them in the description for anyone who wants to go chase all of that.
Thank you. That's awesome.
So,
Thank you.
thank you so much for being on the show. You have been a fantastic guest. I am delighted to talk about this story, which was truly a joy to read. And
Yeah.
I wish you absolutely all of the best on this delightful story and all of the rest in the series. And I hope I get to read them soon.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate all of your feedback that made this story even better than it was. And I can't wait to hear all of your feedback from book two when I finally get a chance to write it down. It is plotted, just got to write it down.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to see what that hallway of paper ends up as a book in my hands.
Yes,
All
yes.
right. Well,
Great.
thank you so much, and I will talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Hart Bound Editing podcast. My name is Rebecca. I am the editor behind Hart Bound Editing, and I am so looking forward to bringing you all more content about writing and particularly editing for all of my fantasy, romance, and historical readers and writers. See you next time.